Why sensitive souls break free from people-pleasing. Alan Watts. We live in a world that rewards performance over presence, compliance over authenticity, and image over essence. From childhood, many of us are conditioned to please, to adjust, to adapt, to anticipate needs that were never ours to carry. And for sensitive souls, this conditioning cuts especially deep. Sensitivity isn't just about feeling more, it's about perceiving more, intuiting more, absorbing more. And when that perceptive nature is met with pressure to conform, to perform, to make others comfortable at the cost of your own discomfort, a dangerous pattern begins to take root. You become a master of external harmony, but an exile from your own internal truth. But here's the paradox. The very sensitivity that makes someone prone to people-pleasing is also the exact force that eventually rejects it. Why? Because something deep inside the observer, the part of you that Alan Watts might call the witness behind the mask, knows that the act of perpetual self-abandonment is a form of spiritual suicide. It's a slow erosion of truth, a quiet betrayal of being. And if you're watching this, maybe you've already felt it, that subtle, aching awareness that no matter how many people you make happy, you still feel empty. You still feel unseen. And Alan Watts would ask you quite simply, who is this I that's doing all the pleasing? We begin the journey of people-pleasing innocently. As children, we learn that love is often conditional. Be quiet, be good, be helpful, don't be too much, don't make waves. And because we are wired for attachment from an evolutionary and neurological standpoint, we adapt. We become the peacekeepers, the mediators, the ones who can read a room better than we can read our own needs. We survive by shrinking, and the world applauds us for it. Teachers call us mature, friends call us reliable, partners call us selfless, but inside we're often drowning in a sea of unspoken truths.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Alan Watts once said, trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. That's the dilemma of the people pleaser. You construct an identity out of reactions, who you are to others, not who you are in yourself. You become a collage of expectations, a hall of mirrors where every reflection shows a different version of you. And eventually, the pain of fragmentation becomes unbearable. That's when the sensitive soul begins to crack, not out of weakness, but because the truth is finally demanding to be lived. That's the turning point. And it doesn't usually arrive with fireworks. It comes quietly. You say no for the first time and you survive. You disappoint someone and the world doesn't end. You choose rest over obligation and you feel your nervous system soften. These moments seem small, but they are revolutionary, because they are acts of reclamation. They are signals to the self that you matter, that your existence is not a utility, that your worth is not contingent on performance. And in these moments, something ancient and sacred begins to awaken, the realization that self-love is not selfish. It's the foundation for every other kind of love that is real. But here's the deeper philosophical insight. People-pleasing is not just a behavioral habit, it's a metaphysical confusion. You believe that maintaining peace externally will create peace internally. But that's an illusion, because real peace can't be faked. It arises when the inner world and the outer world are in alignment. When what you feel, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. And sensitive souls, by their very nature, cannot tolerate dissonance forever. Eventually, the desire for inner congruence outweighs the fear of external disapproval, and you begin to ask different questions. Not, what do they need from me? But rather, what do I need to feel whole? Not, how can I avoid conflict? But rather, what truth am I avoiding within myself? These are the questions that mark the beginning of freedom. They are the questions that people-pleasers were never taught to ask, but must ask if they want to stop living as shadows of themselves. Alan Watts often spoke about the absurdity of trying to live up to an image, to be good according to arbitrary societal definitions. He said, "You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago." That is liberation in its purest form. You don't need to earn your right to exist. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You don't need to apologize for becoming real. And when you realize this, not just intellectually, but viscerally, you begin to detach from the need to manage other people's perceptions. You stop editing yourself for approval. You stop trading your aliveness for acceptance. This isn't about becoming selfish. It's about becoming whole. And in that wholeness, you actually become more capable of love. Not the love that says, "I'll become whatever you need me to be," but the love that says, "Here I am and I'll meet you from a place of truth." That's the kind of love that heals. That's the kind of love that lasts. And that's the kind of love that sensitive souls are born to give once they've given it to themselves first. So ask yourself, where in your life are you still performing? Where are you still shrinking to fit a role that no longer suits you? And what would it feel like to simply exist not as a response to others, but as a full expression of who you already are? The silent rebellion, how saying no becomes a sacred act of self-realization. Something strange happens when a sensitive soul begins to say no. Not with anger, not with rebellion for rebellion's sake, but with clarity, with grounded conviction. It doesn't erupt loudly. There's no dramatic speech, no slamming of doors. It's quiet, almost invisible to the outside world. But inside it feels like an earthquake, a tectonic plate of identity finally shifting into place. And what's so profound is that this simple act, saying no, isn't just a boundary. It's a declaration. It's a philosophical turning point. It's the moment you stop negotiating with your own truth just to keep others comfortable. You see, when you live your life as a people pleaser, yes becomes your survival tool. You say yes to avoid conflict. You say yes to be liked. You say yes because you've been taught that your worth is tied to your usefulness. But every yes that isn't genuine is a quiet betrayal of your soul. It chips away at your integrity, your energy, your sovereignty. And eventually you start to realize that your life is filled with commitments you never consciously chose. You're living a script someone else wrote, and the scary part is, you've memorized your lines so well, you forget you're acting. Alan Watts once said, "You are a function of what the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is a function of what the whole ocean is doing." That wave doesn't ask permission to rise or fall. It doesn't apologize for its shape. It simply is. And that's the essence of the sacred no. It emerges not from ego, but from alignment. It's not a rejection of others, it's a return to self. It's the moment you stop bending reality to suit people's expectations and start living in harmony with your own internal rhythm. But let's be honest, saying no is terrifying at first. Especially for those of us who have built identities around being agreeable, reliable, accommodating. The first no feels like a betrayal. It feels like you're letting someone down. But here's the truth most people don't want to admit. The version of you that others are attached to, the one who never says no, is not the real you. It's the version they've gotten used to because it serves a role in their story. And when you begin to live your own story, some people will fall away. They have to, because you're no longer playing the part they cast you in. That's the silent rebellion. No protests, no megaphones, just a steady, unwavering refusal to abandon yourself. That's what makes it sacred. It's not about rejecting others, it's about refusing to reject yourself. And in that refusal, something extraordinary happens. You begin to trust your own voice. You begin to recognize that your time, your energy, your attention, they are sacred currencies. And every time you say no to something that drains you, you say yes to something deeper: your peace, your purpose, your presence. This is where the transformation begins. Because once you taste the freedom of aligned living, you can't go back. You start to understand that boundaries are not walls, they are doorways to deeper authenticity. You stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for your needs. You realize that anyone who demands your constant yes was never offering you real love, only conditional approval. And you begin to feel the difference between the two. So here's the philosophical question. What if every no is a kind of spiritual compass, pointing you away from illusion and back toward what is real? What if the discomfort of disappointing others is the price of finally meeting yourself? Watts would remind us that life is not a rehearsal. You are not here to be a supporting character in someone else's narrative. You are the dreamer dreaming the dream. And in that dream, your no is not just a boundary, it's a brushstroke of your soul's art. Eventually, what once felt like rebellion becomes natural. You no longer feel the need to justify your truth. You no longer fear being misunderstood. Because you understand that authenticity is not a strategy, it's a state of being. And when you live from that place, your energy speaks louder than any explanation ever could. So I ask you, where in your life is a sacred no waiting to be spoken? What would it mean today, not tomorrow, not when it's convenient, to honor that voice inside you that has always known the truth, even when you were too scared to listen? When the mask falls, The identity crisis that leads to true inner power. There comes a moment in every sensitive soul's journey when the mask no longer fits. It's not a dramatic moment, not always. Sometimes it's as subtle as waking up and feeling a quiet emptiness where purpose used to live. Other times it hits like a storm, a sudden realization that the identity you've spent years curating was never really yours. And when that mask begins to fall, it doesn't just reveal your face, it reveals everything you've been hiding from, everything you've been avoiding, and most of all, everything you've been becoming beneath the disguise of accept. People-pleasing is not just a habit, it's an identity. It's a way of being in the world that says, I'll give you what you want if you'll give me a reason to exist. It's covert, manipulative in its innocence, and tragically effective. Because for a time it works. You get praise, validation, belonging. But over time, the cost becomes unbearable. You find yourself nodding when you want to scream, smiling when you want to cry, showing up for others while disappearing from yourself. The mask protects you, but it also suffocates you, and eventually the soul revolts. Alan Watts often spoke about the concept of the persona, the social mask we wear to navigate the world. He warned against confusing the mask with the self, saying, "You are not the persona. You are the actor behind it." And this is where the identity crisis begins. Because when you start pulling off the mask, you don't immediately find clarity. Jufin Chao's. Who am I without their approval, without their praise, without the roles I've played so well for so long? The truth is you don't know, and that's terrifying. But it's also the most honest place you've ever been. This is the dark night of the soul, not the kind that destroys you, but the kind that dismantles everything false so that something real can take its place. And in that dismantling, you begin to see clearly for the first time. You see how much of your life was shaped by fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of being too much or not enough. You see how often you traded authenticity for safety. And most painfully, you see how you've lost touch with the voice inside that once whispered your deepest truths. But here's the paradox. The identity crisis is not a breakdown, it's an awakening. It's the sacred unraveling of everything that no longer serves your becoming. And while it feels like loss, it's actually liberation. Because in the absence of illusion, you begin to encounter the raw material of your soul, the unfiltered, unmasked essence of who you are. It's not polished, it's not always pretty, but it's real. And that reality is the foundation of true inner power. You see, power isn't volume, it isn't dominance, it isn't control. True inner power is presence. It's the ability to stand in your truth without needing universal agreement. It's the quiet courage to disappoint others rather than betray yourself. It's the strength to walk alone when the path demands solitude. And most of all, it's the unwavering trust in your own perception, your own intuition, your own being, even when the world tries to gaslight you into conformity. And that's the gift on the other side of the crisis. Once the mask falls and the false self crumbles, what remains is someone you've always known but rarely honored. Someone who doesn't need to be everything for everyone. Someone who doesn't need to be liked by all to love themselves deeply. Someone who can finally live, not perform, not appease, not adjust, but live from the core of their own truth. So let me ask you this. What mask are you still wearing because you're afraid of who you'll be without it? And what if the fear of losing that identity is the very thing keeping you from becoming who you were always meant to be? The return to wholeness, why living your truth, heals the world around you when you finally begin to live your truth, not in fragments, not in borrowed language, but in the quiet authority of your own being. Something extraordinary happens. The world doesn't necessarily applaud. It doesn't throw you a parade. In fact, some people may pull away. You may lose relationships that were built on your silence, on your willingness to bend. But what you gain is something infinitely more valuable, your wholeness. And in regaining your wholeness, you don't just heal yourself, you begin to heal the world around you, often without even trying. We live in a society that thrives on fragmentation. We're taught to compartmentalize ourselves, to separate the personal from the professional, the emotional from the rational, the spiritual from the practical. But the sensitive soul feels that this separation is a lie. We are not meant to live in pieces. We are not meant to suppress who we are in order to fit into systems that weren't built for our truth. And when we stop pretending, when we start integrating every part of ourselves, the shadow and the light, the soft and the strong, we become whole. And wholeness is magnetic, it's healing, it's revolutionary. Alan Watts spoke often of the illusion of separation, that the self and the other are not truly divided, but part of the same cosmic dance. When you begin to live authentically, when you stop people-pleasing and start soul-pleasing, you become a living embodiment of that unity. You become a mirror in which others can see their own suppressed truths, not because you're preaching or teaching, but because your presence gives them permission to be real. Your no teaches others they can say no too. Your boundaries give others a blueprint for reclaiming their own. Your vulnerability becomes a bridge not just to deeper connection, but to collective healing. This is where the journey of the sensitive soul becomes a gift to the world. What once felt like a burden, your depth, your empathy, your emotional attunement now becomes your superpower. Not in a performative way, not in a way that seeks recognition, but in the quiet, steady way that truth always operates. You begin to attract different conversations, different people, different experiences. Life starts meeting you at the level of your alignment, and you start to see that the more you honor your inner world, the more the outer world responds in kind. But let's be clear, living your truth doesn't mean life becomes easy. It means it becomes real. You'll still face challenges. You'll still encounter resistance, but you'll meet those moments with integrity rather than self-abandonment. And that difference, while subtle, is everything. It's the difference between feeling lost and feeling rooted, between surviving and living, between existing for others and existing as yourself. So many people are waiting for permission to be who they are, to stop pretending, to stop performing. But the truth is, no one can give you that permission. It's something you must give yourself. And when you do, you break a cycle not just in your life, but in your lineage, in your culture, in your corner of the world. You become the one who ends the pattern of silence, the one who reclaims joy, the one who chooses truth, even when it costs approval. And so I leave you with this final question. What would change in your life if you stopped asking for permission to be yourself? What would it look like to live as if your truth was not negotiable but sacred? Because it is. And when you live from that place, not perfectly, not flawlessly, but honestly, you don't just find yourself. You give others the courage to find themselves too. That is the quiet revolution. That is the return to wholeness. And that is why sensitive souls, once they break free from people-pleasing, don't just survive, they lead. They love. They liberate.